Before the sun clears the Mount of Olives, the city is already awake. You would hear it before you saw it. The bleat of a lamb somewhere below the eastern wall. A gate scraping open on its stone socket. The slap of bare feet on packed earth. And then, from the high platform at the center of everything, a sound that stops the breath of anyone who hears it for the first time. The long silver note of a trumpet, blown by a priest standing on the pinnacle of the temple, announcing that the first light has touched the hills of Hebron in the south, and the day may lawfully begin. This is Jerusalem. It is roughly the year 30. And this is not a feast day. No triumphal entry, no trial, no crucifixion. Nothing the history books circle in red. Just an ordinary morning, the kind that came and went 10,000 times. The kind the Gospels almost never pause to describe, because everyone who wrote them had walked through 100 of them and assumed you had too. But you have not. So let me show you the day the Gospels skip. Walk it with me. One ordinary day, from that first trumpet at dawn to the last oil lamp at night. Through the streets a Galilean carpenter's son actually walked, on the days when almost no one was watching. Somewhere on the far side of that eastern ridge, in the village of Bethany, that man is already awake. To understand the city he is walking toward, you have to understand who holds it. Judea, in these years, is not a kingdom. It is a province, administered for Rome by a prefect named Pontius Pilate. And Pilate is not here. His seat is at Caesarea, on the Mediterranean coast, a full day's hard ride to the west. A Roman city with a harbor and a theater and running water, far more comfortable than this stubborn hill town in the interior. Pilate comes up to Jerusalem when the great feasts fill it with crowds and the risk of riot. And otherwise he leaves it to the priests. We know he was real, and we know his exact title, because in 1961, an Italian archaeologist named Antonio Frova, digging at Caesarea, turned over a block of limestone with his name still cut into it. Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. Stone does not lie about such things. The man who actually governs the daily life of this city is the high priest, Joseph Caiaphas, and behind him his powerful father-in-law, Annas. Over the emperor's throne in far-off Rome sits Tiberius, and the Galilee that our traveler calls home doesn't answer to Pilate at all. It belongs to a different ruler entirely, the tetrarch Herod Antipas, which means that the man crossing the ridge this morning is, in the eyes of this city, an outsider, a northerner, a provincial. The moment he opens his mouth, his Galilean accent will give him away, the way an accent always does. And the city he is entering is, quite literally, a construction site. The great temple at its heart had been torn down and rebuilt on a colossal scale by Herod the Great, beginning around 19 years before this era, and the work is not finished. It will not be finished in Jesus' lifetime. In one of the Gospels, people standing in these courts remark that the building has been under construction for 46 years. John chapter 2, verse 20. And still the scaffolding stands. Still the quarried blocks arrive. Still the dust of the stonemasons hangs in the morning light. Keep that in mind as we walk. The most magnificent structure in the ancient world was, on an ordinary Tuesday, a work in progress. How many people lived here? The honest answer is that we do not know. The estimates run from around 80,000 down to a quarter of that, and the sources simply disagree, the numbers swelling several times over when the pilgrims poured in for the feasts. But the texture is not in doubt. On a normal day, without the festival crowds, this was a dense, loud, working city, pressed onto two hills with a valley running between them, and every soul in it woke to the same trumpet. So let us go down into it, into the first hours. The city divides itself by height, the way cities often do. The higher you live, the more you have. On the western hill stands the upper city, and here the wealth is unmistakable. We are not guessing about this. Between 1969 and 1982, an archaeologist named Nachman Avigad excavated this quarter and uncovered the mansions of the priestly aristocracy. Plastered walls painted with frescoes, floors laid in geometric mosaic, imported tableware, and in house after house, cut into the bedrock, private ritual baths, the stepped immersion pools the law required. This is where a man like Caiaphas would wake, in cool stone rooms around a quiet courtyard, a world away from the noise below. And below is where most of the city lives. Down the slope, across the valley, the ancients called the Tyropion. The streets narrow, and the houses crowd together, and the day begins in earnest. Bread is the first thing. In 100 courtyards, women who have been up since before the trumpet are baking the day's flatbread against the hot walls of clay ovens, and the smell of it drifts up the lanes and mixes with wood smoke and dust. And closer to the markets, the sharper smell of animals. Water is the second thing, and water is work. There is no tap. Someone in every household, almost always a woman or a girl, must carry a jar down to a public pool or a cistern and haul it back up the hill. And this ordinary chore is worth remembering, because there is a strange little moment in the Gospels that turns on it. On the day of his Last Supper, Jesus tells 2 of his disciples to go into the city and look for a man carrying a jar of water. Mark chapter 14, verse 13, and follow him. A man carrying water. In a city where that was women's work, a man with a jar was a face in the crowd you could actually pick out. It was a signal precisely because it was unusual, and the sound of the streets, if you stood still and simply listened, would tell you exactly where in the world you were standing, because you would hear at least 3 languages braided together at once. In the lanes and the markets, the everyday speech is Aramaic, the mother tongue of Jesus and of nearly everyone he passed. In the temple and over the scrolls, the sacred language is Hebrew. And for trade, for the pilgrims arriving from Egypt and Asia and Rome, for anyone doing business across the empire, the common language is Greek. Over the soldiers, when they marched through, hung the Latin of Rome. This was not a quiet, sleepy, holy place. It was a crossroads, and it sounded like one. Now, our traveler, the Gospels are unusually clear about his daily pattern in this city, and it is worth quoting because it is the very spine of the day we are reconstructing. Luke tells us plainly, every day Jesus was teaching in the temple, and at night he would go out and lodge on the Mount of Olives. And early in the morning all the people came to him in the temple to hear him. Luke chapter 21, verses 37 and 38. There it is. Days in the courts, nights on the ridge, a return at first light. That is the rhythm of an ordinary day for him, and it is the rhythm we are walking. He is not staying in a fine house in the upper city. He is sleeping on a hillside among the olive trees and coming down at dawn with the working people. And this tells you something about him before he says a single word. Let me stop us here, on the road down from the Mount of Olives, at the point where the whole city suddenly opens into view, and ask you something directly. Have you ever passed someone on an ordinary street, in an ordinary hour, and only realized much later who they were, or what they were carrying, or what that moment might have meant? A person you walked right past, a face you didn't really see. Almost everyone in this city, on almost every one of these ordinary days, walked past this man and saw nothing but another Galilean on the stairs. I want to know if that has ever happened to you. The person you didn't see until it was too late to see them. Tell me in the comments, not as an idea, as something that actually happened to you. I read them, and this is the kind I most want to read, because the whole weight of this day rests on that ache, the sacred moving through the ordinary, unrecognized. So let us keep walking into it, into the full light of the morning. And we are not the only ones on the roads. Even on an ordinary day, without a great feast, travelers are coming up to Jerusalem, a family bringing a delayed offering, a pilgrim from Galilee who timed his journey to end here. And as they climb the last rise, many do what pilgrims to this city had done for 1,000 years. They sing. There is a small cluster of psalms, the songs of ascents, that were the traveler's own hymn book for exactly this climb. One puts the feeling into words. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord," Psalm 122. Not a choir in a great hall, dusty, footsore people on a road at dawn, singing under their breath as the walls come into view. That is the sound you would be climbing into. By now the sun is well up, and the heart of the city is the same as it has always been. The vast platform at the center, the largest sacred enclosure in the entire ancient world. The numbers are almost hard to believe, and you can still measure them today because the retaining walls survive. The platform runs something on the order of 480 meters from north to south, and it was raised on courses of dressed stone, some of the individual blocks weighing many tons, cut and fitted so precisely that no mortar was needed between them. One of Jesus' own disciples, standing here, blurts out the reaction of every visitor who ever craned his neck at these walls. "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones." Mark chapter 13, verse 1. It is the most human line, a countryman awestruck by the capital. Stand in that outer court for a moment and see it through 3 sets of eyes at once. There is the pilgrim who has come from far away, from Alexandria, from the Greek cities of Asia Minor, from Rome itself, who has saved for years and traveled for weeks, and who now, for the first and perhaps only time in his life, lifts his head to this platform and simply cannot speak. To him, nothing here is ordinary. Every stone is a wonder. Then there is the priest crossing the same court, a man for whom this is Tuesday, who has walked these pavements 10,000 times, who smells the incense without noticing it, whose feet know the way to the altar in the dark, for whom the miracle has long since become a routine. And then there is you, the third pair of eyes, standing 2,000 years downstream, knowing something neither of them knew that morning, knowing who was walking these same courts, unremarked in the crowd. The pilgrim sees a wonder. The priest sees a workday. You see the thing they both missed. Hold all 3 at once, and you begin to feel what an ordinary day in this place really was. You entered the temple not from the west, and here I have to correct an image you may be carrying, because the great arcade you may picture, the long colonnaded avenue, the monumental market street, does not exist yet. That grand colonnaded road belongs to a later Roman city built on these ruins a century after Jesus, and it would be a mistake to walk him down it. In his day, you climbed. From the pool at the low southern end of the city, a broad stepped street ran up towards the temple, and beneath its paving ran a hidden drainage channel. We know this street intimately now, because the Israel Antiquities Authority has excavated it and dated the coins sealed beneath its stones, and the paving falls squarely within the years Pontius Pilate governed. Which means, and I want to be careful and honest about the certainty here, it is a reasonable inference, not a proven fact, that Jesus set his foot on these exact stones as he climbed to the courts. But the stones are real, and the street is real, and the odds are good. At the top, you passed through the gates into the outer court, the one place in the whole enclosure open to everyone, Jew and Gentile alike. And this is where an ordinary morning got loud, because the temple ran on offerings, and pilgrims arrived with coins from every corner of the empire, stamped with the faces of pagan kings and Roman emperors, coins that could not be given directly to the temple, so they had to be changed at a table for a fee into the acceptable currency. And every adult male owed the annual temple tax, the half shekel, a specific ordinary sum, the same for the rich man and the poor man alike, which you can find as far back as the book of Exodus, and which surfaces again in a small, strange scene where Jesus sends Peter to find the coin in the mouth of a fish. Matthew chapter 17. The money changers and the sellers of sacrificial animals filled this outer court with the clink of coins and the bleating of lambs and the low haggling of a marketplace. It was, on an ordinary day, exactly the scene that would one day make Jesus overturn the tables. John chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. Not because a market is evil, but because it had swallowed the one court where the outsider was meant to be able to pray. And there was one more presence in that court, easy to miss and impossible to forget once you have seen it. At the northwest corner of the platform rose a fortress, the Antonia, and from its towers Roman soldiers looked down into the temple courts. Even on a quiet day, with no festival crowd to worry them, a few of them watched, because Rome had learned that if trouble ever came to Jerusalem, it came here, in this court, among these crowds. The occupied and the occupier shared one skyline. A Judean coming up to pray did so under the eyes of the empire that ruled him, and he knew it, and he prayed anyway. That tension, a holy place watched by foreign spears, sat beneath every ordinary morning like a held breath. It is the reason Pilate bothered to come up at all when the feasts filled the city, and it is the backdrop against which everything Jesus did in these courts unfolded. Not a private garden of devotion, but a crowded, watched, politically charged square at the center of an occupied nation. Deeper in, past a low stone barrier, the ground grew holier and the access grew narrower. On that barrier hung warning signs, cut in Greek, forbidding any Gentile to pass further on pain of death. And this is not a legend either. In 1871, a scholar named Charles Clermont-Ganneau found one of those very inscription blocks, the actual sign, the actual threat, and you can read it today. Beyond it lay the court of the women, and around its walls stood 13 chests with trumpet-shaped mouths to receive the offerings. It was here, watching the coins go in, that Jesus saw a poor widow drop 2 small copper coins, the very smallest coins in circulation, and said she had given more than all the rich, because they gave out of their abundance, and she gave out of her poverty all she had to live on. Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44. An ordinary woman, on an ordinary day, giving almost nothing, and seen completely. Not everyone made it into these courts. At the pools and the gates sat the beggars, the blind, the lame, the sick, because in a world without medicine, the disabled survived on alms, and alms flowed where the pilgrims flowed. There was a pool by the sheep gate, called Bethesda, which the Gospel of John describes with an odd, specific detail. It had 5 roofed colonnades, John chapter 5, verse 2. For a long time, skeptics treated that as a symbolic invention. 5 porticos for the 5 books of Moses. Then the pool was dug up on the north side of the old city, and it had precisely 5 colonnades, 4 around a rectangle and 1 across the middle. The Gospel was describing a real place it had seen. And at the far southern end of the city stood the other great pool, Siloam, fed by the spring through Hezekiah's ancient tunnel, where the ritually unclean washed before climbing to the temple. In 2004, repairing a sewer, workers stumbled onto its steps, and archaeologists Ronnie Reich and Eli Shokran uncovered the monumental pool where John says Jesus sent a man born blind to wash and come back seeing. John chapter 9. The man walked the whole length of the city, blind to reach that water. We have found the water. Do you feel what is happening as we walk? Every place the gospel names, the ground gives back. This is not a myth suspended above history. It is a city you could survey. And then, in the middle of the afternoon, the whole city pauses. It happens at the 9th hour, about 3 in the afternoon by our reckoning, and it happens because of the deepest rhythm of all, older than Herod, older than the Romans, written into the law itself, twice a day, every day, at dawn and again in the late afternoon. The priests offered the tamid, the continual burnt offering, a lamb given morning and evening without fail, generation after generation. You can read the command in Exodus chapter 29 and in Numbers chapter 28. This was the heartbeat of Jerusalem. When the afternoon lamb was offered and the trumpets sounded from the platform, work paused, heads turned, and across the city people stopped to pray. In the book of Acts, you can see it as a fixed appointment in ordinary life. Peter and John going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. Acts chapter 3, verse 1. Imagine it. The bargaining stops at the money tables. The girl sets down her water jar. The beggar lifts his head. For a moment, the whole crossroads holds still, and the smoke rises, and the silver notes hang over the rooftops, and then the day resumes. Now hold that still moment, and let me tell you what it means, because this is where an ordinary day stops being ordinary. There was an old promise, spoken by the prophet Malachi centuries before, that the Lord whom the people sought would suddenly come to his temple. Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. Suddenly. Not with an army at the gate, not with the sky torn open. Suddenly, quietly, on a working afternoon, in the middle of the coins and the lambs and the pilgrims and the smoke. The claim at the center of the Christian faith is not that God arrived in Jerusalem with a spectacle. It is that he was already walking its ordinary streets, climbing its stepped road at dawn, watching a widow at the treasury, and that almost no one looked up. That the most important figure ever to walk this city walked it the way you walk your own, on foot, unremarked in the crowd. This happened, the faith insists, not in a story far away, but on stones you could stand on. It happened, if you will let the second person land where the Gospels aim it, for you. And there was one place on this ordinary walk where the man himself is said to have stopped and wept. Coming down the western slope of the Mount of Olives, at the exact point where the whole city bursts into view, the same view we stood in earlier, Luke says Jesus looked at Jerusalem and wept over it. Luke chapter 19, verse 41. Because it did not know the things that make for peace. He was not weeping over a stranger. He was weeping over these streets, this temple, these people at their ordinary work, because he could see what was coming for them. Because the day was numbered, all of it. By now the light is going long and gold across the platform, and the city begins to fold itself up for the night. The market's thin. The last business at the money tables closes. Up in the upper city, and down in the crowded lanes alike, the same small act repeats in every home as the sky darkens. The oil lamp is lit, a little clay lamp with a wick of flax, and the family gathers, and the words of the evening Shema are spoken. Hear, O Israel, the same words spoken at rising, now spoken at lying down, exactly as the law in Deuteronomy commands, in the morning and in the evening, when you lie down and when you rise. Around that small light, the evening meal is simple, and the same in most houses on the hill. The flatbread baked at dawn, now a day old, olives, a dish of lentils or beans, perhaps a little salted fish carried up from the lake in the north, watered wine. Nothing costly. The rich in the upper city ate better, but the shape of the evening was the same across the whole city. Bread broken by lamplight, the old word said. The children quieted. The trumpet does not sound again. The gates close. And out through the eastern side of the city, up the darkening ridge toward Bethany, a Galilean walks back the way he came, to sleep among the olive trees, and to come down again at first light and do it all over. Because that, Luke told us, was simply his custom. That is the ordinary day. And here is the thing you cannot unknow once you have walked it. Within roughly 40 years, none of it would be standing. The stones that made the disciple gasp, the wonderful stones. Jesus answered that man by telling him that not one of them would be left upon another, Mark chapter 13, verse 2. And in the year 70, when Rome finally crushed the Jewish revolt, that is very nearly what happened. The temple was burned. The platform was stripped. The Jerusalem of this ordinary day, the money tables, the treasury chests, the 5 colonnades of Bethesda, the stepped street from Siloam, the whole living crossroads, was thrown down. The Great Wall you may have heard called a place of prayer. Today was, in this era, simply a retaining wall holding up the platform. It became a place of mourning and prayer only much later, after everything above it was gone, which means the ordinary day we just walked was not permanent scenery. It was a specific city on borrowed time, and the man weeping on the ridge knew it. But this event does not belong only to the past. And here I want to speak to you now, wherever you are hearing this, on your own ordinary day. The deepest claim of that Jerusalem morning is not about stones. It is about attention. It is that the sacred was moving through the ordinary, down a working street, past the bread ovens and the water jars, through the noise of the money tables, pausing with the whole city at the 9th hour trumpet, and that its passing was mostly unseen. The widow gave her 2 coins and thought no one noticed. Someone noticed everything. The blind man walked the length of the city in the dark toward a pool. The water was real. The crowds stepped around a Galilean on the stairs and went to their business. And you have a street like that. You walk it most days without looking up. There are people on it you have passed 100 times and never seen. The ones carrying something heavier than a water jar. The ones giving out of their poverty. The ones you would recognize, if you slowed down, as mattering more than you assumed.
I am the way.
The Gospels are not finally asking you to marvel at ancient stones that no longer stand. They are asking you whether you can see the person in front of you today, on your own ordinary, unremarkable, numbered day, while there is still light to see them by. If someone came to mind while you listened, someone on your street, someone you have been walking past, this is your reminder to actually see them this week before the light goes long and gold. And if this walk through the real Jerusalem meant something to you, share it with one person who would feel the same, because there is someone in your life who needs to hear that the holy hides in the ordinary. If you want to keep walking these streets with me, follow along. I will keep reconstructing them, one ordinary day at a time. I will leave you where we began, on the ridge above the city, at the hour when the first trumpet sounds. Ask yourself one last question tonight, and answer it in the comments if you dare. If the holy really does walk through ordinary days, unrecognized in the crowd, then who did you walk past today?